What I've recently discovered, read farming magazines, because that will give you so much more insight into what big agriculture is doing and why it's so hard for you to keep pests away, or why it's so hard for your plants to not get plant diseases. It's not you, it's just your home gardener. You are a few paces behind a big corporation. This is the type of information that would calm somebody like me down. Failing is going to be your best friend and something that we should welcome with open arms, 100%. What's up, y'all? Long time no see. What I really want to talk to you guys about is making mistakes as a gardener. I'm about, 80% of the way through my first growing season, so I'm a beginner, like many of you guys watching. The main thing I want to tell you guys, and it's coming from a place of encouragement, a place of personal experience, is that whatever mistakes you make out here in the garden, there is no reason for any of us to harp on ourselves too hard. There's no reason for any of us to feel any shame about the mistakes that we've made. And I'm going to tell you 3 big reasons why. The first reason is because as home gardeners, we are like 15 steps behind big agriculture, right? So while we're over here struggling to deal with pests, struggling to deal with plant diseases, struggling to deal with imbalances in our soil, struggling with low germination rates, struggling with not getting things to fruit, in big agriculture, they are doing so many things to make sure that like almost none of that happens, that we either don't have access to or we don't have the information about to do it ourselves. Now, some of these things aren't really the best, meaning they work, but they're not great for the environment long term. So I'll give one good example, right? One of the biggest things that I struggle with is pests in the garden. Big agriculture actually pre-treats all of their seeds before they even go into the ground. Like, I did not know that. They are pre-treating the seeds for pests. They're pre-treating the seeds to withstand plant diseases. And so that is not something that we as home gardeners a lot of the times have access to or even know about. While we're over here feeling bad about, leaf miners getting a hold of our plants, or aphids, or cucumber beetles, or corn earworms, or what have you, big ag has figured out a lot in terms of making sure that that stuff either doesn't happen or they can reduce it before seeds even go in the ground. Now, the good part about this is that it works, right? The bad part is it's not always the best for the environment. Now, how did I even find this out as a new gardener? So y'all, I've been taking advantage finally of my library card. So there's an app, it's called Libby, and as long as you have a library card and you put your card number in, you can read books, magazines, what have you, from your local library digitally online for free. That is where I found out that they sell chemicals, solutions, where you can pre-treat your seeds for pests, plant diseases, before your plants even go in the ground, right? So in that sense, we are quite a few steps behind big agriculture, and we are naturally just going to have to deal with more things, and we are going to fail, which is a good thing, because we will actually learn how to deal with our problems naturally versus chemically. Another reason you should not be too hung up on any mistake that you ever make in your garden is because we live in such a high-tech society now that gardening is not what it used to be. Like, a lot of times what we do in our backyards is kind of like, maybe we're like 50 years behind. We're doing traditional gardening, but big agriculture, like I said before, they've put out so many different solutions to common problems. I'll just give a few examples from greenhouse gardening. Right now, there are tools available that will monitor the moisture in your soil, and if it's dry, alert a drip system or an overhead watering system to replenish that soil with water, right? So that's one thing. Another thing is if you're in a greenhouse environment, there are tools that will measure the temperature in the environment, the humidity in the environment, and adjust those levels accordingly, right? So even if you have something like fans in your greenhouse, we now have automated systems to where if your greenhouse is too humid, the fans will turn on and aerate so that there's some circulation and airflow going through your plants so that you're not getting a bunch of plant diseases and fungal diseases from simply having the environment too wet. If you watched my solar drip irrigation video, like that's an example of some of the newer tech that we have at our disposal. If you are a new gardener just starting out, you have no idea that any of this stuff even exists. I do, in the future, plan to have a very high-tech urban farm. One of my goals long-term is to go from a backyard home gardener to someone who has more of a homestead urban farm, and I can sell produce to underrepresented, underserved communities that look like me, right? But in order to do that effectively, where I live, I'm gonna have to take advantage of most of this tech to be competitive, to be consistent. So yeah, I would just say if you're a new gardener starting out, do not be ashamed of any of the mistakes you make, because there's so many things that can go wrong that big agriculture is currently solving through tech that you may or may not even have access to. So there's no point in even harping on it. All we have to do is just learn and keep moving forward. The third reason we should not really focus too heavy on our mistakes as gardeners, especially if we're new, is because not all of us live in climates where the general gardening advice is going to work for us. And if you're new, you don't really understand what advice you're supposed to be seeking out. And there's a lot of general advice that in the beginning, it's going to steer you in the wrong direction. So I will give you the perfect example. This year, I said, okay, I want to grow some tomatoes, but I want to grow heirloom tomatoes, right? So most new gardeners will do exactly what I did in the beginning, which is you go to Google and you type in how to grow tomatoes, when to grow tomatoes, when to plant tomatoes, right? And a lot of times, the thing that we don't think about that's kind of unsaid in this world is that gardening advice comes from the perspective of what I would call fair weather climates most of the time. So, for example, the advice that I got back about growing tomatoes was that, oh yeah, like that's a warm season crop. You can grow that well in the summer, so plant that in the summer. Now, what the gardening world means when they say it's a warm weather crop is that technically is not going above 85, 90 degrees in most places, and the weather is staying pretty consistent. So think of places like Southern California, Florida, the Carolinas. These are the places that they're actually building this advice upon. If you live in a region that's a bit more challenging and the weather fluctuates often, like me, I live in Texas. Like the weather is, it's either crazy hot or we're bouncing between hot and cold all the time. You are going to have to dig a bit deeper for more specific gardening advice. And that's not something that you can really discern just starting off. You kind of have to just put the seeds in the ground, find out that, oh, even though it's summer and I'm growing tomatoes like they told me, my tomatoes aren't gonna do well if the temperature is over like 85 degrees, right? And I'm gonna need something like a shade cloth. I'm gonna need to use more mulch. I'm gonna need to water more often than the general advice online. So it'll just be stuff like that. Things that you will never know until you actually fail, which is why failing is going to be your best friend and something that we should welcome with open arms. 100%. I would just say there's a lot that goes into this behind the scenes. If I had to give any advice, the best thing that you can do is research, research, research beyond all of the general stuff that you see. I mean, look at things for your specific zone. And what I've recently discovered, read farming magazines, because that will give you so much more insight into what big agriculture is doing and why it's so hard for you to keep pests away, or why it's so hard for your plants to not get plant diseases. It's not you, it's just you're a home gardener. You are a few paces behind a big corporation. So I feel like these are the things that are slowly giving me more confidence going forward. And then I would always say, like, seek further education. Like for me currently right now, I am in pursuit of my urban agriculture certificate through Purdue Extension. And just by taking that course, y'all, I found out that I can't plant the same thing in the same bed every single season back to back to back. That introduces more soil diseases, that introduces more plant diseases, and introduces more pests because you're not rotating those crops and you're not giving the soil more diversity, because every plant comes with a different set of bacteria, a different biome. So y'all, it's just so much that you have to look into. So I hope this helps somebody out there, because it definitely helped me when I was making my mistakes, and truly, I don't like to mess up. I don't like to mess up at all. So this is the type of information that would calm somebody like me down. So I hope it does the same thing for you. And until next time, happy gardening.